So first of all, we're going to learn how to sew them together. See how it's nice and flat? There's no ridges at all. I really like this method. So let's learn how to do that. It's really simple. If you haven't done it before, you shouldn't have any problems because it's really simple to learn. So what you're going to do first of all is go through your granny squares and make sure they're the right way up. Because if you get to the end and realise you've sewn one of your squares back to front, been there, done that, you're not going to be very happy about it. So what you're going to do is make sure they're all the right way up. How do you know if it's the right way? What's the good side and what's the bad side? Well, with experience you will just be able to tell by looking at it. But this side looks nice. It's kind of bumpy. And the other side, it's hard to explain. I think the other side looks more flat. Like the stitches are flat and they're smaller. See how the little tiny little stitches? And on this side they look a lot bigger. Did that make any sense? I hope so. So you should be able to tell the difference. This is the good side and this is the bad side. So make sure they're all the right way up. Put them in a pile. I've already done this before, something I prepared earlier. So we're going to grab 2 squares. And what we're going to do is put right sides together. So the good sides, the side you want to look at, you want to put them together. So that's this side, and you want to put them together like that. Then you are going to get your piece of yarn, and I'm going to cut off about half a metre, 50 centimetres. I think that's about half a yard, so quite long. But don't make it too long because you will get yourself in a few knots. So we're going to thread our needle. And what we're going to do with the wrong sides together, good sides together, so on the inside it's the nice side facing each other, we're going to put the thread into one of our corners. Now depending on your granny square, you're just going to pick the stitch that's in the corner of the granny square. Now if you chose this square, you've got 3 stitches in the corner. You're going to put your needle into the second square. The second stitch. You're going to pick up your other square and put it into the second stitch as well. You're going to pull through. Don't pull through too far because you'll pull the thread right out. We're actually going to tie a knot. I don't normally tie knots in my crochet, but when it comes to this, I don't want it coming undone, so I'm just going to tie a knot. Now you can work over your thread as you go. If you don't want to, or you find it's too hard, just put it to the back and then we can sew that in later. Easy enough. So what we're going to do is we're going to match up all the stitches along here. Now a way to do it, if it's this kind of square, you can match up the holes that are on the, on the front and at the back. That'll make sure it's all lined up. Or put your corners together. You might have different granny squares that you're using for your bag. They might not all be the same. So put your 2 corners together and line them up. You want to make sure it's nice and even. And what you're going to do is grab your thread. You can go from back to front or front to back. It really doesn't matter. And you're going to go through the matching stitches. So if it's this stitch on the back, it's going to be the same stitch on the front. You can go through both loops on both squares or one on each. Entirely up to you. Actually, I'm going to go this way, make it easier for the video. So under both loops of both squares, and then just pull your thread through. Go to your next stitch, do the same thing, and you're going to repeat this all the way across. So I'm just pulling my yarn through. See how that's getting caught across the top there? That's what you're going to do if you were sewing it as you go. So I'm going to leave that at the back. So going to the next lot of stitches, making sure you're picking up both loops. Now once you get the hang of this, it is a little bit faster, of course. Just like anything, if practice, you'll get better. And that's what we do for all of our squares. Now what I do, I actually like to cheat. After I finished all my squares, so normally you would join one here, then you'd get your next square, and then join the next one like that, and you'd make a strip. But I actually cheat. So I'm going to quickly go along, join this together. I'll just keep the camera rolling. So as you go along, you're going to make sure that the ends are still matching up, because you don't want to get to the end and have like one shorter than the other, because that's not going to work. If you've got different amount of stitches on one square to the other, maybe you can't match up the stitches like we are here, so you're just going to lay them together and just stitch across. Nice even stitches will make it sit a lot better. Okay, so you're going to remember that we need to go into the corner stitch of both squares, making sure that you're getting them so that your corners are joined. So now we've got these two squares joined up here. So now what I'm going to do, if I need to make, oops, if it's joined, so we've got two squares there, and then we need to join another two squares there, what I do is get my two squares, make sure my good sides are together, and I join this on here and keep going. So we're going to, they're still attached here, we're going to find the corner of this square and the corner of the one behind. We're going to pull our thread, and see how it's still attached over here? We're going to pull that tight, not too tight, just so they're butted up next to each other like so, and continue working across. And this is a lot harder to do than it is sitting in front of the TV. A lot harder working around this camera. It's highly unnatural. If you could see me now. But looks good on camera, so that's all that matters. So we're just working our way across, like exactly what we did with the other square. And then what happens is, when we open it up, our two squares are joined in this seam here. See that? So when we've got all of our squares joined together, then you can work down this seam. And what it does, instead of having all these threads to sew in, if you sew one to here and then one to there, you're going to have that end and then that end to sew in. By doing this, if you've got a seam that goes all the way across, you're only using one piece of thread. And if you're anything like me, I cannot stand sewing ends in. So sew your 17 squares together like you have on your the diagram that we have to print out. I do have mine somewhere. Seems to have got lost in the crochet. But sew them all together, and then I will show you how to put the bag together. Just sew it so you've got the flat section. There will be a bit on your graph where it says to sew the sides together. I'll show you how to do that bit, so don't worry if you don't know how to do that. You just want to make it sewn all the squares together until it's just that flat, funny looking shape that we have to make with our 17 squares. Okay, so the next part in the video, I'm going to show you how to crochet squares together.